Thank you again for joining us. I'm Lindsey Wahlstrom-Edwards, Director of Partnerships for Antidote. We're a digital health company on a mission to accelerate the breakthroughs of potentially life-saving treatments by bridging the gap between medical research and the people who need it. And I'm joined today by Bryan Butvick, who is the co-founder and CEO of Zubia. Bryan was inspired to start the organization after his youngest daughter was diagnosed with a rare disease called Marfan syndrome. He created a platform that's dedicated to health and wellness where, using live streaming interactive video, people can go to share and learn about relevant and current information. Regardless of any personal limitations, he believes everyone should have access to the same current health information. Before starting Zubia, Bryan was a senior executive for a public company where he was president of several divisions, accountable for over $500 million in revenue, and led all M&A activity. Bryan's married with 3 young daughters. He loves all outdoor activities and is involved with several charitable foundations.
Yeah, that's a very, very robust summary, but yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Bryan. We're really excited to have you here.
Yeah, and I must say also, Zubia is a partner of Antidote, and very happy to be linked with Antidote, so thank you for having us.
Well, the feeling is mutual. So let's get started by having a little bit of an introduction as to why are we having this discussion, and why is it important to talk about video when you're thinking about growing your reach and sharing information about your organization?
Yeah, no, it's crazy, but the trend of video as a way for people to share information and learn information is growing so rapidly that it's just something that I want to tackle with Zubia, and everyone wants to tackle, whether you're a foundation or whether you have something that you want to share or learn. So statistically, it's about, in the year 2020, over 80% of all internet traffic will be video. And they say that when you're, it's nuts. And when you're watching video, you retain 95% of the message versus text. They say you generally retain around 10%. So it's just an effective way to link something that you want to learn or even share, something social. But video is coming up so fast. You see it in everyday life.
Yeah. I have a ton of questions, but I'm going to save some of them for the end because I'm pretty sure you're going to cover off on the bulk of them. And I could have us here all day going through my questions as they come up. So let's talk a little bit about what platforms are out there when we talk about all of that internet consumption being on video. What platforms are out there? How can people use them? And what are the benefits of each? So let's start with what's out there.
Sure.
And I think you have some groups that you all discuss. So
yeah, for sure. Being in the space and being in streaming video, it's important that we know what's out there and what best practices are and advantages and disadvantages. So I kind of lump them into a couple categories. So first I'll look at broad-based entertainment platforms and the Facebook, the YouTube, the Vimeos, Snapchat, Periscope. To me, those are massively effective because they carry a really huge audience, but they're broad-based and they're known for a lot of, fun concerts and different activities you do, along with health and wellness. Then I look at things like enterprise level tools. So Zoom, what we're using right now, which is a great platform, WebEx, GoToMeeting, things that you'll see a lot of companies use as a way to interact with employees or interact with an audience that they want to get something out to, but not necessarily attract an audience, but use their audience. And then I look at some great communities and foundations, that are in their own world. So things like Inspire, things like all the great charities that are out there, WebMD and so forth. And they're a great resource for information. So what I like to do is I like to look at all the pluses and minuses of those and figure out what's right for the person that's giving the message.
Okay.
So I can delve into a couple of them.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So for example, Facebook Live is huge. It's there's 100 million hours of video consumed on Facebook every day, which is crazy. I mean, my goodness. But so what are some of the pros? Well, you have a huge audience. You are able to target an audience. You're able to boost a video, which means you can target demographics and geographical locations and things like that. Some of the minuses of a thing like a Facebook is, where does it appear? How is it indexed? So you've done a great video on maybe your foundation or clinical trial or something coming up that's important to you. Well, it's on your newsfeed, and then eventually it's going to start to disappear, and it's going to be a little bit harder to find. So if you go on a Facebook or a YouTube, it's tough when you have to type in something to figure out how to get a certain video or certain information about that topic, unless you know who the author is or the host. But again, they carry such a big audience that it's important to make sure they're incorporated in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Hands down. You know, even at Zubia, we've made sure that Facebook can be streamed simultaneously as it is on Zubia, because I don't want to discredit that audience.
Yeah.
So that's huge. YouTube, Vimeo, which I know Antidote uses for some great videos, are fantastic resources and absolutely have a place in how we disseminate information. And then Zoom and those technologies, like I mentioned, the pros and cons are it's easy to use. Everyone that's on this broadcast has probably found it pretty simple, but it's invite only.
Yep.
So, you know, whoever this video goes to, no one else can really find it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at all, I lump them together. I kind of say entertainment, I think of the Kardashians, but in between the Kardashians are nuggets of really interesting health and wellness information. You just have to sort of find it on those, or you use a tool. And at Zubia, what we did is we sort of took a little bit of all of that. So we took the model of allowing it to be public and anyone watch broadcast, but also keeping it anonymous and stored later. And so we kept a little bit of everything. And the most important thing for us is dedicating it to health and wellness. So, you know, instead of having the social, and which I love, and I love cat videos, but we wanted to create one world where when you go look up a rare disease or you look up nutrition or a foundation, it's very easy to find.
Great. So you mentioned videos for clinical trials, and you all obviously focus on health and wellness. My life's clinical trials, Eat, Sleep, and Breathe them. Yes. There are some special considerations that we have to keep in mind. So I just want to mention those on the call because I know I'm hoping that some of the people who are listening are interested in doing some promotion work of clinical trials with video. And that's just that when we're talking about clinical trials generally, we can have a lot of flexibility. We can, you know, kind of say why it's important. It's the message is our own. But if we're talking about a specific clinical trial, there's an IRB, which is an institutional review board or an ethics committee. You might hear that say. I know you all know this very well.
No, yeah.
But the role of that board is to ensure that any messaging that goes before a potential clinical trial participant has been approved and reviewed to make sure it's not misleading. The aim is to really protect the patient participants. Yeah. So when we talk about specific clinical trials in our work, anything that goes in a video is a script that's been approved by that IRB, and we follow those rules really carefully. All of our images and text and all of that has been approved. But the match tool that we use and that you all have on your site, that's exempt because it's aggregating all trials in clinicaltrials.gov. We're not recruiting for any one specific trial. So I wanted to make that clear. But you also have some interesting features on your platform, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you can address some of those concerns with the IRB, and then also if there are any other platforms that might potentially allow an avenue for people to share information about clinical trials in a way that doesn't call any ethical questions into concern.
Yeah, no, it's, and I'm sure your audience and certainly Antidote is so aware of the IRB rules and restrictions, and we are as well. And really, it is to protect the participants and make sure that the information is consistent and, you know, isn't even accidentally misleading. And so 100%, which brings up an interesting question, because how do you deal with that on live video?
Right,
you know,
it's tough.
And on any video, and does it all have to be approved by the IRB? So at Zubia, and I think probably all platforms, we would not get into specifics on the clinical trial on a live video because we don't know what the person's going to say.
Right.
You know, it's just so it's not worth the risk that they're going to stick to the script. So what we tend to do, and my recommendation has been, we focus more on the condition. So we'll have a broadcast about a condition that may have a trial out there for it. And that condition, the person will speak to it, and just like anyone would, it could be a perspective of a parent or a caregiver or a doctor, you know, foundation. And once that video is done, we archive it, and then on that video, we'll take IRB approved verbiage and put it around that video. Okay. So we kind of tend to stay away from trial specifics, as you mentioned, and then other videos like Antidote does, we just talk about clinical trials in general. Yep. You know, what does it mean? What is it? You know, we have a patient advocate that's been through trials at Zubia, and he can share his experience. So it's just general terms, because I think the statistics are 50% of people or more aren't even aware of what a clinical trial is.
Right.
Which is why what Antidote
That's why
does is
we're here.
amazing. Yeah. And so, something as simple as what does a site mean and all that sort of stuff that we take for granted. So anyway, in conclusion, we kind of just try and shy away from specific, but really give value to people that are watching the video and hopefully link them with Antidote or the Bright trial.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I did a video with Black Nurses Rock a while ago. It was through a Facebook Live event that was really well produced. They did a great job with it. And we ran into the same issue where they had wanted me to speak to a specific trial, and I, right before the call, was like, oh, so I can't do that. But what we did do is we talked about clinical trials more generally and all options that were available, and then we had a slide that was all approved language where we said, and this is this particular clinical trial, and this is how we addressed it. So thank you for touching on that. I think that's a really important.
Yeah, and I think, and also some of these platforms, if you know who attended, like you would in Facebook, like you would on Zubia or Zoom, you can also reach back out if it's approved by the IRB to let them know about information, or at least draw them to the match tool or things like that to go in there. So yeah, we like to follow up, but for sure, very cognizant. The IRB, I mean, it's a good thing though.
It's a good thing to be aware of if you're working in clinical research in general. It's an important, a term you'll hear frequently.
Yeah, even like you can't, how you position the words, again, this far more than I do, but how you say, is there pay or is it a new treatment? You can't use it, so
new potential,
new
potential treatment.
Yes, there you go.
So we've talked a little bit about all of the, not all of, but the top and the most popular video platforms. Yeah. Let's talk about best practices for using video more generally.
Yeah, sure. So we have a lot of hosts. Yeah. So we've had a lot of hosts get broadcast, and we've learned a lot over the past few years about what makes a good broadcast and how to work it. So initially, I would say you have to think before you start the video. There's some steps you have to take. So first of all, you should probably schedule it 7 to 10 days in advance, which I think you do. You can probably do a bit more. And then some reminders, kind of obvious stuff, but some people forget it. So you want to remind them, hey, this is coming up on such and such date, and this is the time, and this is the host. The other thing I find to be pretty effective is to give a little bit of a summary of what it's about before you go live. So someone that's tuning in knows, okay, this is the perspective of fitness or a foundation, or it's about someone going through a clinical trial.
Right.
So that this way that when they tune in, they already know what they're getting and they're engaged. I always prefer to have an engaged audience versus a higher volume of people that maybe aren't there for what they wanted to get. So and the obvious thing, practice beforehand. That's kind of goofy, but especially if you're going live, so the live video is growing very well as well. And so a lot of how you dress and what's the lighting and what's the Wi-Fi signal and audio and all that sort of stuff. So kind of obvious stuff, but good things before you get started. Then throughout the video, best practices include things like stalling in the beginning, as you did. If it starts at 3, more people are going to join at 3:02 and 3:03. So we tend to use that time to continually introduce the host. This is Bryan Butvick. I'm from Zubia, and I'll be talking in just a couple of minutes. Maybe give your contact information and let people know where they can reach out to you in the future. Setting expectations is important on video. So let the person know that it's going to be recorded, so you don't have to take notes. Let them know how long it's going to be and whether you'll be answering questions. Interactive video, as we do, sometimes you get questions throughout it, and you may choose to answer right there. Other times you might say, I'm going to hold the questions till later. Other times you might say, I'm going to do a separate broadcast that just addresses the different questions I got. So I think just managing the expectations throughout is pretty important. Be authentic. I think we were talking earlier, and there's been live broadcasts where there's a dog that barks in the background.
It happens.
It's become more acceptable today. There's great produced videos, but it's kind of okay to have things. It feels real when it's not totally produced. So I urge people to have fun with it. Be outside. We almost went outside today. And the last couple of things is I would keep things simple. So take a few key concepts and stick with those and sort of repeat them throughout. So instead of giving a ton of snippets of information, you're sometimes better off saying, well, here's my 3 themes, and maybe you're going to do a series, and maybe it's every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you talk about a different aspect of it. But if you overload with information, which I fear I may be doing right now,
I think we're okay.
okay, then it just sort of is more effective, and you get more. The audience feels like they really gain value.
Okay.
And then the last thing is just finish strong and summarize what it was the broadcast was about. Again, always give your contact information. Give a way that they can reach you and learn more information. Make sure your profile, your brand is pretty important. And just recap what you did, and the next time you're doing a broadcast. And that's kind of what we find to be the most effective.
That's great. We have a rule here where if we are going to produce a piece of content like a video or a podcast or whatever, that we think of 3 different ways that we could use it beforehand. And one of the reasons that we do that, and I share this because I know some of our partners are starting to dip their toe into paid ads on social, is that when you're looking at advertising, especially on Facebook, what really drives how much your ad is shown and the price of each impression is your relevancy score. And video is a great way to boost your relevancy score because you get a lot of interaction on video. People comment, they like, they share, they post it. And if you have people doing that, your score goes up, and again, your cost for the advertising goes down. So video has been a really great asset for us in that sense.
Yeah.
But we do, again, if we're going to make something, it's how can we put this on our blog? How can we share it out with our network? How can we use it on social to share it with a wider audience and all of those things too? So I guess I'll add to the information. When you were worried you were already overloading, I will officially set us over the edge with overloading, but that's been a really helpful tip for us as well.
Yeah, I think the statistics show that 1,200%, so 1,200% of people are more likely to share a video than images and text combined.
Yeah.
So encourage people to share, and they will.
Yeah.
If they find value in it.
I was having a conversation with some of the people who were at Facebook really early on. They're still there, and they talk about the concept of thumb stopping. And in today's world, what's the content that when someone's online and scrolling will make them stop their thumb and watch? And it's usually video, and that's really their move to video. And Facebook's doing a lot with actually buying video series and putting it out as Facebook branded content. So.
100%. I mean, 100 million minutes a day, hours a day. Sorry, Facebook is an immense amount, and there's 1 billion people on YouTube. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more about the power of video right now. Doing it. The interesting thing too, one thing I'll add is, oftentimes people say, well, the length of my video, how long should it be? And if you're on Periscope and you're surfing or you're saying happy birthday, you probably want 30 seconds, to a minute tops, and then people start to lose interest. I find in health and wellness, there's more of an appetite because people are really trying to seek the information. They didn't stumble upon it accidentally.
Right.
So, so we tend to look at a 10-minute video. However, I do also encourage people to take snippets of it. So take 1 or 2 minutes of that 10-minute video and put it on YouTube or put it on Facebook. And again, like you're saying, get some hierarchy, some reach out there, and also it lets people absorb things in quick amounts of bites.
Yeah, great point. And the good thing too about a YouTube or a Vimeo is that you can actually embed the video directly in your website or blog or however, so you don't have to send people off site in order to find it.
That's right. That's right. So it appears it's seamless on the website.
Yeah. You all have that function as well.
We do. Yeah.
Okay. So let's recap the conversation thus far and then open up to some questions. I want to keep it tried to half an hour, but if we go over, that's fine too.
Okay.
So we started off the conversation. We're talking about the different platforms that are available and out there, and kind of the key ones that we really focused in on were Zoom as a great tool to be able to record video. And I should say, if you have a Zoom account, you can record a video without anyone else on the line too. So we use it a lot for that purpose. QuickTime Player will also let you do that, which comes standard on a Mac if you're using a Mac.
Absolutely.
We talked about social, especially Facebook, and all of the content that's consumed on Facebook. And so that's a great platform to get going on. We talked about ZubiaLive, obviously, where people can record content that goes live streaming on Facebook as well, download it.
So all these, I just love the idea of any of the platforms where you can type in Marfan syndrome. For me, it's personal, and find content right away really easily. So yeah,
that's a great point, the indexing piece of it. Twitter, obviously Periscope is usually the video integration there, and then using sites like YouTube or Vimeo to upload content and share it out through embedding or either with direct links.
And you can use them, and you know this, but you can start a video on any platform and still put it onto YouTube or put it onto Vimeo. So you're not beholden to that. And I think you ought to make sure that you do post your video, repurpose it in as many platforms as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, get it out there, spread the word. The more eyeballs that you get on it, the more likely people are to share it.
Yeah.
And then you shared some really good key takeaways, and you went into depth on all of them. But I'm eyeballing your cheat sheet here.
Yeah.
Can you just run through them quickly, what the key takeaways were, or if you have 3 key messages that you really want to focus in on, that would be great.
Sure. So in terms of best practices,
yes.
If I were to narrow down the ones that I care the most about, it would be invite people early, let people know it's coming up, manage their expectations. What is this going to be about? And have a strong finish, which continually gives your information and where they can find out more about you, about your foundation, about your organization, about a trial. Those would be the 3 things. Everything else is important too, but that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and everyone, I think anyone who's done video knows that your first few don't go very well.
Yeah.
So stick
with
it, keep at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of the strong finish, let's touch on that. I know some people will have to jump off. So if we get cut off during the Q&A, I want to make sure that everyone knows how to get a hold of you. So where can they learn more about your work?
Yeah. So thanks. Bryan, Bryan at ZubiaLive.com.
Okay.
So literally ZubiaLive, and the website is ZubiaLive.com, and I'm on there. So yeah, love to hear from anyone. We work with a lot of foundations that want to raise awareness about what good they're doing in the world and how to attract, whether it's donors or participation or events coming up. They tend to use Zubia quite a bit to just spread their word, invite their followers, get new followers and stuff like that. So
great.
we'd love to work with them.
So ZubiaLive is ZUBIA live.com, and then you're Bryan, BRYAN at ZubiaLive.com.
Yeah, and Zubia, just for background, I was trying to find a word that meant bridge, bridge to information or bridge to wellness, and every bridge word was used, a couple years ago, but in Basque, Zubia means bridge. So I was able to find one where it's a bridge to wellness, a bridge to information.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm going to open it up now to questions. I've actually muted everyone who's on the line. So I think the best way to do this, if you have a question, to send it in there's a little chat box at the bottom of on the control panel. So it says chat, there's a little messenger bubble. Go ahead, click in there, let us know your question. I can also unmute you if you want to ask it. I have a couple just to get us started.
Sure, yeah.
So lots of platforms out in the world. If you were going to suggest the #1 platform where someone should go to get started for the biggest bang for their buck, where would you suggest that they go?
Yeah, not counting Zubia, obviously. Probably biggest bang for the buck, I would probably go Facebook Live.
Okay.
And here's why I think it's a good start is you're already talking to an audience that knows you. So if you're not boosting it, you're not trying to send it out to a bunch of people, Facebook gives you an audience. So if it's your first one and you're using Zoom, you may be a little bit nervous and maybe it's not the perfect quality. You may not want to invite everyone. If you're on Facebook, it's people that are familiar with you that probably are engaged with you already. So they're willing to have a tolerance for how you do. And you automatically will have questions, and stuff like that. So that would be my one advice.
Okay. We have a question from Cody, and he is asking, what level of post-production do you recommend for people? And he's a little worried about all the resources that are required to do video well.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And you know this quite well too. A lot of the foundations I work with, it's a question of resources, well, how, who's actually going to do it. Believe it or not, what I'm finding is editing a video is not difficult to do post-production. It's very user-friendly now. It seems like something like, you have to cut off the first minute because you're waiting in the last minute and stuff like that. But with today's technology, and I won't go into too much detail, you from your desk can edit a video and upload it to YouTube in minutes and make it the way you want it. So don't get overwhelmed thinking post-production is too important, because you can do it. It's a matter of you having the resource to film the video, to do the first part.
And I can, like, a personal anecdote on that one. My husband's a filmmaker, which I've shared. I think I share it widely, but he is, if you didn't know. And I don't have him edit any of my videos. So I just figured it out. I record on Zoom, download the content into iMovie and edit from there. And it's pretty fast.
Right.
You can add titles and really quickly it's self-explanatory.
Yeah, 100%. So. You can do streamers on the bottom. You can add text to it, your email address, your website. So,
I'll probably do that on this one before we share it out.
Okay.
We have another question from Harry, which is, are videos with talking heads more effective than videos showing other images with talking content?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a little bit of a matter of preference, Harry. I like conversational for me. If it was a doctor talking that wanted to show something with anatomy and things like that, I would probably show images, and I would do more of a webinar.
Okay.
But when it comes to talking about a topic and really conversationally going back and forth, statistics show that consumers are more interested and more engaged when it's a conversation as opposed to more of a chart sort of.
And there is a way to easily, back to Cody's question, to insert some of those images after the fact too. So if you're interested in having a combination, I always record the conversation part and then we add some things in afterwards.
Totally. And it's just like we talked about, if you manage expectations, if you say, hey, listen, by the way, this recording will also include some of those graphs I referenced, then it's perfect.
Yeah. Great. One other question for me, which is, what are some of the big rookie mistakes that you see, especially with the broad entertainment category of?
Well, yeah. The biggest one, I think, is the lack of description of what they're airing. And I know we touched on it earlier, but, you know, again, as someone that wants to learn about Marfan syndrome, sorry to keep going back to that, but if I'm on Facebook or YouTube or Vimeo or any of those, I really want to know what it is I'm about to invest 10 minutes in. And a rookie mistake is that, you know, sometimes it's somebody's last name happens to be Marfan. You know, like there's so many different ways you can go wrong. So the biggest thing is just letting people know what they're about to watch, because they'll be engaged.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question here, and that is, how do you recommend people get started?
That's a great question. The first thing I would do is I would write down on a Post-it what it is you're trying to convey. What's the perspective? You know, are you trying to talk about a condition, a clinical trial experience, or a foundation and what you're up to? Write down those 3 or 4 key points that you want to get to and just sort of stick it next to the computer or next to your phone. Once you have that down, I would then just pick a vehicle. And whether it's Facebook Live, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Zubia, just pick that vehicle and really just go for it. You know, a lot of people get nervous and they spend too much time saying, well, how am I going to do it? And it is a little bit nerve-wracking to be on camera the first time, but as you know, after the 10th time, it's just like being on, you know, walking on the street. So my first, how do you get started? Write down the concepts you want to do. Maybe think of it as a series instead of just one video, and think of it, okay, over the next 6 months, I'm going to do 1 video a month, and this is what I'm going to convey, and this is the perspective I'm going to share, and it's going to be the view of a patient or a donor, and then just go for it, and then you'll get better each time. But it's really just pulling the trigger.
Great. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have the conversation with you, and I know that everyone's enjoyed it. We will, as I said, we're recording this, so we will be sending out the link to everyone who registered for the webinar. We'll also be posting it, and it'll be available on the website. So thank you again, Bryan.
Thanks for all the anecdotes as well.
Yeah.
For clinical trials. Yeah, for health and wellness. It's great.
Same here. Thanks. And have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining.